And so let's get back to helping right now with some safety tips around the house. So if people are looking at different ways to secure the house and make it a little bit safer, what are some of the suggestions you would have?
Well, obviously barriers to any sort of open water, education, teaching your children to swim at an early age. I encourage that.
Yeah.
It's very important.
And what about the water watcher card?
Oh,
Talk
water
about
watchers. That is an idea that I kind of borrowed from the Dippy Duck program. And basically, you teach kids that they have a water watcher, and that water watcher is there to help them stay safe around water, and they have to listen to them, and that they're only going to tell them things that are going to help them have fun, but keep them safe. It's about making the whole idea of being safe this activity that they get to engage in. So
Nice.
so you'll teach them the rules, like no running, no pushing, no dunking, don't dive in if you don't know how deep the water is. You always start off with, going in with your feet first.
Right.
And then the water watcher awards them these stickers at the end of their, water, I called it the water session. And kids get so excited about this. So the water watcher card was basically a board where if little Sally was great around the water today, she got a sticker. And I can't tell you how excited kids get when you give them stickers on a board and, on their body, on their hands, or, they just go insanely, they get so excited, which is it's incredible to watch. But the water watcher really it's an effective way to get them engaged and have them participate in this dialogue of how to be safe, and then seeing the rewards for being safe by actually giving them something like a sticker.
And it's so fun because I think we all love to be acknowledged in some way. And the sticker is such a fun little way. I mean, as I mentioned to you in the break, I think it's so important when I go to my gym, my trainer says, "You want a gold star for doing that work. You should just be thankful." I said, "No, I need my gold star." He keeps threatening to actually bring stickers. But I think it's so important that we find a way that, again, the more that we make it a game that is playful and happy, in that awareness, then that becomes the game, instead of the game is to rebel against, what is safe. And again, the more you communicate with a child and the more that they understand that this is the reason we're doing it. But again, it becomes playful when I get a sticker. I want a sticker.
The more you can engage them and make this a positive experience, something that they can, and give them something that they can, work toward. This, if you get 12 water safeties, stickers, then you get a popsicle at the end.
Oh, there you go.
So it was really about giving them a goal too. And there were things like making sure that you help remind people that are forgetting some of the rules, how to engage them. You do it nicely. You say, "Hey, remember, we're not supposed to run." You don't boss them. Say, you have to ask them,
Yeah.
And then if they're not listening, to engage the water watcher, who is obviously there to monitor.
Well, and I think one of the things that is just a human condition is we're always looking for somebody who actually helps us and asks us to agree to something. So if we agree to water safety, then we'll do it. But if we never agreed to it and it was just forced upon us.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. So that's why it's important to have the dialogue and get them to, see the value in being safe around water. And I find that I've never had a child say, "No, I don't want to do this." What kid doesn't want a popsicle or a sticker?
Right. Exactly. And what child doesn't want to play a game? Yeah.
Exactly.
They always want to play a game. When we go out for houses and I look at houses, I always engage the children into a game. And there is so funny because we do all sorts of different things. Like one of my favorite children right now who's so determined we can't buy a house unless it has a red door. But he also, his sister doesn't want a house unless it has a pink room for her. And of course some houses have children's rooms that are pink and some don't. So anytime there's not, or if there's the right toys in the house, which of course we're like, that is not why you buy a house. But again, the more that they're involved, the more that they become part of the process, the more they also decide that this is an environment that they want to keep safe and that they want it to be. Again, even though they might not understand, home should be a sanctuary that is safe and healthy. They know it instinctively.
I agree.
Yeah.
And kids have this, they have beautiful hearts. They want to do something good.
Yeah.
They like to be a part of something where they know they're helping.
Right.
And this is a great way to engage them in keeping their peers or their siblings safe while still having fun around the water themselves.
Absolutely. So also when we talk about preventing falls at home, that's also something that's really important when we're trying to create safety around the home. So what are some things that people can do to prevent falls?
Well, obviously you want to make sure that you're looking at, how your children are, what is around them in their environment. Do they have things that they can climb up on, and make sure that if they do, that you're there to monitor. Monitoring is really the key to avoiding falls with children. But teaching them that, do little activities to show them gravity and explain, I used an egg. I said, okay, see, this is an egg. And if you drop it, it's fragile. So we looked at, we dropped it on a pillow, and that was okay. But when you dropped it on hard tile, oops, that's not so okay. And it just gave them that visual awareness. Our bodies have to be taken care of. So I would explain to kids that you have to be careful as when you go high, there are risks to elevating yourself up. You need to make sure that you know how to get down, and that there's someone there that's watching you, because you don't want to fall. And I always go back to that demonstration with the egg. See, our bodies have bones and they do break just like the shell of an egg. So, yeah.
I think that's really important, and I love the visual of the egg because, again, the more they can see something, the more they're like, oh, that makes sense.
Absolutely.
I don't want to be the egg that got broken. No. So today we have Melissa Hall. She's an award-winning artist, author, and international keynote speaker, and host of a TV show called The Ripple Effect. She's also founder of Water Safety for Kids. Her newly released book, Lessons from Neverland, is a memoir that recounts her journey through tragedy that ultimately led her to discovering her life's purpose. Today, she is a business and personal development coach who also mentors others. So I want to, first of all, say welcome back to the show, Melissa.
Thank you.
We are very happy to have you, and I want to make sure that people know that the phone lines are open at 1-866-801-8255. We lost our last caller. Hopefully, whoever needs to call, if you have any interest in asking questions, and Melissa, myself, about real estate or about safety around the house, anything like that, we're interested in helping you when you're going to look at real estate. One of the other things when we're talking about safety is so often when parents are looking at a house, they forget to think about that this house that they're looking at might not have all of the child safety things like the electrical stuff. Will you talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you can do around the house to make your house a little safer with electrical issues?
Obviously, the plugs. There are plugs that you can purchase to put into your electrical outlets and keep your children from being able to put things in them. That's usually what I find is the most common. That and cords, electrical cords. You need to be really careful. Kids, trip and fall, and also they play, and they don't always think about avoiding putting things around their neck or their siblings' neck. You just need to. Education again and monitoring are really the two most important things. But I show parents the obvious things, and then I always ask a lot of questions like, what do your kids typically get into? You know your child's habits, kind of understand their mind, and then think the way that they would to help kind of keep them safe. One of the things that I found is it really helps with water, the temperature of water, burns, being scalded by water is another common household hazard. So turn down the setting on your water heater. Make sure that it's not scalding. Yeah.
And I think it's so important that people, when they're living in their house, that they look at that kind of stuff. But also when they're looking to buy a house, they need to be looking at, is it close to water? Are there electrical hazards? Sometimes it's amazing when we go into places, there will be just wires that are loose. That are just naked, and people could really, not only a child, but an adult. So there's hazards all around us that sometimes we have to be aware of.
Yes, and overloading those power cords, those power strips, you need to be very aware of that as well, because that's another potential
hazard.
Fire hazard, yeah.
And there's so many fire hazards. I think we've done different shows as well on like the lint in that backs up in the dryer. That's another fire hazard that's so often overlooked when we're looking at safety.
Absolutely.
Just like a kid deciding they want to crawl into a washer or dryer. So sad. We'll talk a little bit about, though, one of the things that I think is important also is that people have the emergency numbers around the house, whether it's the poison control, the police, ambulance, a nurse, all of that stuff. So
again, that goes into education, and I agree. Have it posted in a very obvious place. Teach the people that come into your home, tell them where it's at. It's best to have it right by a phone, but nowadays people have their phones with them all the time. So, just make sure you post it in a place in your home and tell everyone where to find it so that it's, in case it's needed, it's there.
Yeah, and even the children need to understand
absolutely
exactly where it is and how to, work a phone.
I find that kids know how to work a phone at a very young age. I've seen 2-year-olds playing with phones and doing it very well.
Yes, it's amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's incredible how much, and kids they learn so fast. So also some other things that they can do. You talked about electrical, like the outlets and the power cords, but also electrical appliances, and also checking to make sure the cords are not worn.
Absolutely. If you see any sort of wear, you need to, I recommend just either having it repaired immediately or just replacing.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important to pay attention to that stuff. And again, a lot of it has to do with just awareness of what's happening around your home. And anything to do with water. We talked about ponds and pools and stuff, but also toilets.
Toilets, yes. You definitely need a toilet lock. There are toilet seat locks. Again, anything that holds more than an inch of water is a potential hazard. So buckets, pots and pans. Kids, unfortunately, kids can get into some, unimaginable. For us, it seems like, well, how could that ever happen? But the truth is, it does happen, and the best prevention is just education. So just make sure, and monitoring. So make sure you're monitoring your house. Never leave water in containers, just for your child's safety.
Yeah, it's very, very important. Again, the phone lines are open at 1-866-801-8255. You can give us a call about safety or about real estate. Feel free to give us a call about real estate questions as well. So our next caller is Tony, calling from California. Welcome to the Jennifer Hammond Show, Tony.
Hey, Jennifer, how you doing?
Excellent. How are you?
All right. Well, I have two questions. One comment and one question that's really not about safety. What I realize is a lot of people don't realize this. I've been in my house 18 years, and I had no clue you were supposed to replace your fire alarms every 10 years.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, once they're up, they don't even think about that.
Yep.
That's a very good tip. They do need to be monitored and checked constantly. Yep. Every year, I recommend that you test to make sure that the batteries in them are still
and the
good.
same thing with carbon dioxide. I mean, there are a lot of people that don't even realize that's so important. And I mean, again, the battery is really important, but I mean, even the detector yourself, fire alarms and carbon monoxide. So Tony, thanks for bringing that one up. It's important that we look at the ways to make our house a little more safe. So you had two questions, Tony?
Yes, my next question is about real estate. Mm-hmm. I have an excellent credit rating of like 840.
Nice.
I paid my house off at 18 years.
Wow.
My question is,
that's great. Congratulations.
Good job.
I'm about to tell Karen I got the first time caller yay from you.
Yay! I'm so glad.
Okay, my question is, what do you do once you pay your house off? I mean, because right now we're banking a lot of the money, but is it a way I can make my house make money? Or we really love our neighborhood. I know a lot of people say you should move and use that equity, but we really love our neighbors and our neighborhood.
Well, there's so many different ways that you can use it, because once you paid it off, then that's an asset that you can take the money out and use it as a line of equity, and you could use that into buying, use that as a down payment on buying another property that is then a rental property, which is one way you could do it. So number two, I'm going to give you a couple. And then number two, if you have an extra room in the house, you may end up renting out one of those rooms for like Airbnb, or even if you have like a college or a place around where people might want to come for like a month or two. You could rent it out, so you can leverage the home in that way. But the biggest one that you'll find is that people take a little bit of the equity out and then put it into another property of one nature or another that you can then actually have a passive income. Because one of the key things now for you is passive income.
Passive income. Okay, I'm going to do a whole lot of research on that this weekend. And thanks for your professionalism.
Of course, Tony. Thanks for calling in. And thanks for listening to Karen Hunter, too. We love her.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. So we're going to go back to Melissa. We're talking about safety around the house and how important it is to really pay attention to what's happening in a house and how we can make it a little bit more safe. And even when you're going to look at real estate with children, it's so important that you really look at how safe is this home. And not only when you're just looking, but also if you're going to go ahead and purchase a property. So one of the things you want to do is really look at what's around it. And the other thing that a lot of times gets brought up is like a forest. If there's a forest or some kind of trees or a natural backyard rather than a fenced in where you can kind of control the environment. So what are some of the tips that you would say for people who are looking at backing up to some kind of forest or a natural setting?
That's a great question. I typically encourage parents to set boundaries, put things in the yard and say like, okay, this is as far as you should go, because beyond that, I'm not going to be able to hear you in case something were to happen.
Right.
Teach them and demonstrate things. Say, okay, I recommend taking your spouse and saying, okay, now Daddy, you go walk off and let's see how long we can hear. Like, where is Daddy at and can we still hear him? I think giving them those practical examples really help them understand that they have to stay within an area where they can be heard in case something does go wrong, and also seen. You never want to lose visual contact with your child. That is so important that you constantly know, but also that they are looking to see where you are as well. Teach them that it's a collaborative effort. If I can't see you, then you can't see me. So let's make sure that we constantly can see each other.
And I think it's really important, like you said before. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember my mom used to have a bell that she would ring. And if you couldn't hear the bell, you weren't allowed to be that far away from the house. And that was her bell to bring us home. Sometimes it was for dinner, but a lot of times it was, we just had to come home because she wanted to check on us and see that we were okay. But I think it's really important, the sound. But also, let's shift gears a little bit to poisoning. So around the house, there's so many things that are toxic. So how can we help children be safe around the house with poisoning?
Well, first of all, limit the amount of toxic chemicals that you have in your house. Obviously, they should be stored in locked is my recommendation. Put in a place where there's a physical lock. But if that's not possible, the higher up in shelves that you can store them, the better. You don't want them eye level to your child. You want to make sure that, and then stickers also, if you put something on them, a visual cue, like this is not okay, teach them the difference between, a good product and a bad product. And kids, they're not going to always read the labels, but they do understand visual cues, and visual cues can be very important in helping, kind of teach your child what is okay and what's not okay.
And I think what you just said is also important is that you're communicating with the
Absolutely.
child. You're not just doing it and just assuming that they're going to understand. Communicating with it, and visual cues, any kind of symbol that really shows that this is something that's dangerous.
Right.
So we don't want to mess with that. That's really important. The other thing I think that's also really important, with medicines, there's chemicals, all those different things, but also putting some kind of, whether it's a lock on the door, some kind of way that makes it difficult,
Absolutely.
if not impossible, to get in.
So the more barriers you have between your child and a potential hazard, the better. So think about layering those barriers. So think of communication as one method of creating a barrier. Okay, so it's a psychological barrier. Okay, I know that that's not okay. But if they forget, then you have the lock there. And then if they forget that, then have the sticker. Give them as many visual cues and barriers as you can so that they become more aware.
Right. I think that it happens so often that children are just so curious.
Absolutely. That's why we need these things like locks and
Yeah, they just want to, they're just looking for something new and, and I love you never want them to stop being curious. So the more you can educate them, the more you can make the house safe for them.
Right.
know?
And give them, if you have places in your house that are kind of off limits, also give them, cabinets that are totally on. Like they have free access to those cabinets. So give them permission to engage in the activities, but make sure that they're doing it in a place that they know is designed and designated for them.
And just like what you said before about like the cabinets that they can get access to, you also want to make sure that they're not the ones that they can pull out something heavy that falls them on the head. It might not poison them, but it could actually hit them. And so tempting to climb up onto cabinets and especially little boys, they want to climb on everything.
They do. They do. And little girls too, but I have to say in my experience it's the little boys that tend to be the ones that like to climb and play swords with kitchen knives.
Exactly. And play swords.
You have to be careful.
So I know that we talked a little bit about your television show, and as we're wrapping up, I wanted to let people know, so how can they watch your television show?
I can be found by going to wbtvn.tv or my website, melissahull.com, and that's melissahull.com. And there are links to take them to my TV show. I'm distributed on Roku, Netflix, Amazon, Apple TV, all the different major distributors of OTT content.
Excellent. Yes. And again, so your social media is?
Melissa Hull. You can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, under Melissa Hull. Yeah.
Perfect. So again, the website is Melissa Hull, and it's HULL.com.
HULL.com.
So Melissa Hull, and then and also, like you said, on Hulu, your show. And one last thing, tell them about what is the topic of the Ripple Effect TV show.
The Ripple Effect it focuses on everyday people doing extraordinary things by just choosing to make a positive difference in the life of another person.
And I think that's so important that people know that everyday people are making a difference, even though sometimes you don't think they are.
Exactly. And sometimes it's simply just sharing your story.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed when I share my story, the feedback that I get. When you know that you're making a positive difference by sharing some really difficult life experiences. Yeah. And seeing the good that's coming from it, it really is, it's empowering, it's uplifting, and it's also so healing. It's really what I love to do.
Yeah. Well, Melissa, I'm so thankful that you came all the way to D.C. and that you shared your story. I know it's a really hard story to share.
Thank you for having me. Really, it's been wonderful. I appreciate this so much. Thank you, Jennifer.